it was a little bit scary. And I kind of knew like, okay, this thing, you think you can do it, but it's a little bit scary. Normally, your brain says, run away. But I was like, no, I'm on to something. You've got to go towards what scares you and give it a shot. Because if you don't do it, you failed by default.
All right. We have Dom Bubri joining on the podcast live in Boulder.
Yeah.
You made the trip to the bubble.
I did. It's great to be here. Came up from Wheat Ridge, so a little short ride, but it's good to do this in person.
Of course. I need to pause my watch because I was just out for a dog walk.
Gotta get the stats.
Gotta get the stats on the Amaze Pit.
Yeah.
Okay, the first question is always a tough one, and that question is, who is Dom?
Who is Dom? Okay, so I work in finance. That's my day job for a functional beverage brand in the CPG world. That's consumer packaged goods for those that aren't familiar. Originally from the East Coast, but now call Colorado home. It's been home for going on 11 years now. When I'm not working, you're likely going to find me outside on the trails, hiking, running, skiing, enjoying all these wonderful activities Colorado has to offer. And then I guess things that I kind of think about on a daily basis that I really enjoy is just, disciplined growth and what you can accomplish over a long enough span of time through enough consistency, whether that's in work or with your health or in life in general. So I guess if I were to distill down like a few core principles that are front of mind for me every day, I would say 1, pay yourself first. 2, perform without purpose. And then 3 is everything is impermanent. So you might as well enjoy the ride, enjoy the process while you can.
That was a great podcast. Dom, Thanks for coming to Boulder.
We'll wrap it up right there. Cut.
That's the epitome of what this show is all about. What is it about the sustainable growth and that growth-oriented approach that you're drawn to? And obviously that led to endurance sport. You're also in finance, and so like the numbers piece is woven in there, kind of by default as well.
Yeah, and I think maybe it is because I work in finance. You're always kind of like looking out into the future and forecasting it in the future, long range planning, not to bore anybody. But so I think that kind of naturally plays in where getting into endurance sports, it's taught me that little daily micro actions compound over time and can lead to incredible results. So, intensity gets a lot of attention. It's very sexy, but consistency is, maybe dull or boring to some, but it can pay off.
Not the listeners of this podcast.
Not the listeners of this, but that is something that I found is crucial to long-term success.
Yeah, and like jokes aside, like the agenda that I have with this show is to demonstrate that. And so it's having a variety of people coming at it from different angles to demonstrate how they've been able to apply that practice into their life, whether they're front of the pack, back of the pack, middle of the pack, or doing business. Have you always had that approach, or was it kind of like I have to fail until I learned that I simply must focus on the consistency rather than like burning hot briefly?
Yeah, I think it's probably a little bit of a combination of that. So I guess just like backing up to like how I started running, that I would go back to 7th grade. So at that time, my parents moved myself and my sister from the suburbs of Philly down to Florida, Marco Island, Florida, for anyone that's ever heard of it. And so I was playing basketball was my main sport at the time. I wasn't really running at all at that point, but ended up becoming friends. The first few friends that I had in Florida ended up playing on like the 8th grade varsity basketball team together. So we all went out played together on that team. And I kind of learned very quickly, like, all right, it's very humid and hot down here. So I don't know, I'm huffing and puffing, just like moving up and down the court a few times. So I just kind of thought like, okay, maybe I should start running to kind of get acclimated here. And this is, still at a pretty young age, and just decided to start, just a couple miles here and there just to kind of build that endurance.
This was 7th grade?
Yeah. And I kind of just,
Smart kid.
yeah, it was something that, wasn't pleasant at the time. Cause again, I'm going outside in the middle of the afternoon. And it's like 90 degrees, 100% humidity. And it just happened to be the 8th grade basketball coach, Coach Raymond. He was from the Hoosier State, Indiana guy, big time basketball guy, but he also coached the high school track and field team. And so he's a big time runner. And I never really thought about this until very recently, but I think that kind of like maybe planted the seed about running. He had some sort of like crazy record like in the community of like thousands of days, consecutive days running. So that was my like, kind of first introduction to that. And so I figured, okay, this guy must be onto something. So that kind of like led me down the path of incorporating running into just kind of like a way to stay fit. And it never grew beyond that through high school and even in college. Like I didn't run track, I didn't run cross country. And even in college, like I ran, a few half marathons here and there. It wasn't until I moved to Colorado where that started to become a bigger part of my life. And then ultimately, I, got into hiking a ton. And then that kind of was where the marriage of running and hiking kind of came together. And I started thinking, oh, there's got to be trail running here in Colorado, obviously. Now, looking back, it's like, we're sitting in Boulder. It's maybe one of, or if not the mecca of trail running in the U.S.
As long as you're not from Flagstaff, you'd agree.
True. So I kind of just got that curiosity then to give things a go and went down the rabbit hole of like looking into trail races. And before you know it, I'm signed up for a 50K and just completely skipped the marathon section, which to this day, I think people get surprised. I still haven't run a traditional road marathon, and I don't know if I will. I did sign up for one, and then that was in 2020, so it was COVID year, and then that got delayed and then canceled, and then my whole training plan there was kind of like, it almost kind of like was like the universe telling me like, all right, just stick to trails, don't do the road marathon.
Yeah, don't do this again because we don't want another pandemic.
Yes, so that kind of that got me on the path, and like I don't know, the rest is history from there. I've gone from like the 50K distance all the way up to 200-mile distance, and that was something that if you talk to the 10 years ago Dom, there's like no chance in the world that I'm even considering running a marathon. Like I would have laughed at that idea, let alone 100 miles, 200 miles. Yeah.
10 of them.
Yeah. I would have said, yeah, you're talking to the wrong guy.
Yeah. I did an audience survey recently. About 40% of people listening to this consider themselves trail focused. Obviously that's based on a subset of the people listening. And I'm seeing a lot of people trying out trail running for the first time. So maybe for the majority of people listening who haven't or wouldn't call themselves dedicated trail runners, like what did you do first? How did you go down that path, pun intended?
Yeah. So, it started out just like I said, like a love of hiking really sparked it. And I would just do day hikes with, maybe a buddy of mine. And then eventually I got comfortable enough where I'm doing a lot of solo hikes as well. And then I would start just kind of like inching the distance like further and further, because there were these like, I'm trying to look for little hidden pockets, trails where people aren't all over the place. Like I love to get on a trail that's not super crowded. And oftentimes that means you got to find trails that are maybe a little bit longer of an approach to get to the destination.
The payoff.
Yeah. So I started doing that, and eventually, whether it was with doing it solo or with a hiking buddy, we would kind of like get to the lake, get to the summit. And then on the way down, like one of us would kind of like turn around and say like, you want to just like run for a little bit, like make up a little bit of time. Maybe it's a Sunday scaries are starting to hit and you're like, I got to get home and, do life stuff. So
no Sunday scaries when you're in functional beverage.
That is very true. Very true.
We're just working on guts.
Yeah. So I would, we'd run for a little bit. Sometimes it'd just be like, hey, we're going to run for like just a quarter mile until we're breaking a sweat. And eventually I was like, okay, that was kind of fun. And so I just got more and more interested. And over time, you get more comfortable with it, because I think a lot of, friends that aren't trail runners that I, interact with, they're just like, how do you not like trip over yourself? And I'm like, it's just,
you do.
Yeah, you do. You honestly do. If you don't go out for a trail run and like have one of those moments where your life flashes before your eyes and you're about to fall forward, then you didn't really
I mean,
have a trail run.
I got into trail running in like 2015, and I was living in Boston and mostly not doing any trail running in the Boston area. And I would go race in California. But like every so often I would go for a trail run in the Middlesex Fells, which is like an incredibly rocky and rooty area where I go to Central Mass and do Wachusett Mountain. And it was like 50% of the time that I would do a trail run, I would sprain my ankle. And I was like, how do people do this? Like I was like, I can't walk for 3 days. And I work with David Roche as my coach, and he was like, you just do it and you just like bounce back, and it just gets bendier and bendier every time you do it.
Yeah, it's totally true. Like it's just the reps. Like you need to put in the reps. Like you start to, I mean, if anyone like is a skier, you kind of learn like you're kind of looking like a couple of turns ahead to like get your body going that way. You kind of get that way in trail running where you get to a point where you don't have to look like directly down at your next step, and you can instead look a couple steps out so you know where your foot's going to land.
Forecasting.
Yeah, you're forecasting, exactly. So you kind of know like, how is my foot going to land on, like, do I need to land more on my toes? Do I kind of know I need to land on my heel based on, what the terrain is? So again, it's like, it's not one of those things where you just like get out of bed, put on shoes, and you're like, I'm an expert trail runner.
Right.
It definitely
10,000 hours.
Yeah, it takes a lot of time, and yeah, you're gonna stumble and stub your toe a million times and question it, but eventually it becomes habit, and you'll realize you start to get faster. Because I wasn't a very fast downhill runner at the start. You're very hesitant. You don't know where to put your feet, but over time that becomes natural.
Okay, so you do your first 50K as the first race. You skip the marathon distance. At some point, you're like, I'm going to do a 100-mile race.
Yeah.
Why?
It was something that, again, I didn't have, like, that wasn't the goal when I started trail running. And I had, at the time, podcasting started to kind of become bigger, more mainstream. This was, so that first 50K was in 2019. I signed up in 2018 for it. And so I'd gone down the natural path for anyone that
David Goggins.
You go Goggins, I'd do Rich Roll. Like you start hearing all these different people and their experiences. And even though, Goggins is very different in like his approach than someone like Rich, the messaging when you peel it back,
you could do anything.
It's basically the same message.
Yeah.
So I got very curious. I was like, well, I don't know how to run 100 miles, but I think I could. Like, I'm just like looking at the, different races and how much like the cutoff times and how much time you have to do it. I'm like, okay, you could almost like walk a lot of this and like get it done. So I'm like, I think
30 hours is like what, a 17-minute mile?
Yeah. So I'm like, it's doable. It's just a matter of like, how bad do you want it? And I really...
That book is over there, by the way.
There you go.
How bad do you want?
That's another great book. And so I basically, tossed that around for at least 6 months. Like in my head, I was like, I think I could do this, but I just didn't pull the trigger yet. And then eventually I was like, you know what? You're not going to know. And like, you're curious enough about it. It stuck around. It wasn't just like a weekend thing where I listened to a podcast and I'm like, oh, cool. 100 miles sounds fun. Let's sign up. It was a thought that stayed with me for months and months and months. And that was kind of like, it was a little bit scary. And I kind of knew like, okay, this thing, you think you can do it, but it's a little bit scary. Normally your brain says run away. But I was like, no, I'm on to something. You've got to go towards what scares you and give it a shot. Because if you don't do it, you failed by default.
Right. What was the final catalyst, or what was the final like piece of inertia that pushed you to hit sign up?
I think it was ultimately like the experience. It was like a combination of the experiences that I'd had through some like 50Ks and 50 milers up to that point, where it was like, okay, I performed like fairly well for being new to the sport. And I was like, okay, like I know it's still a lot more of a distance to go, but this is manageable. And I kind of just had this like deep down feeling of like, I wanted to like prove to myself that I could do it. And not just like think that I could do it. It was more just like, okay, like you got to stop thinking about this and just give it a shot. And what's the worst that can happen? Like you fail and you don't finish. Like a lot of people don't finish. Like that's part of growing and learning and becoming good at something, you're going to fail 1,000 times maybe before you have success.
So you sign up. What does that training block look like?
Yeah. That first 100-miler, it was actually in 2020. So, and
Wow.
it was September 2020. The race still happened.
Wow.
And so it was kind of like,
What state was it in?
it was in Colorado.
Cool.
It was down in the Sangre de Cristo range. And I kind of had planned the year out going in. I was like, okay, I need to figure out how I'm going to ramp up to this. And so part of that training block was just like a couple of races. So I think I had like a 50K like late in the spring. I had a 100K, the Never Summer Wilderness 100K in whatever that is, July. And so I was going to like, the 100K would have been the longest distance I'd gone up to that point. So that was going to be a good understanding of whether I could do this. And then like COVID comes, it's March 2020, and I'm like, oh crap, like, are any of these races going to happen? But instead of like using that time frame to kind of just like shut down and be like, all right, I'm going to just, hey, this global pandemic's happening, so I'm just going to like kick back and not keep pushing.
Do virtual happy hours.
Yeah. So it almost like refocused me to the point where it's like, okay, what have I, up until this point, what have I been like wasting time on that is not really helping me get anywhere? And I've realized like, okay, I'm going to like pour myself into this thing. I'd already kind of started training. So I was already kind of used to like going out doing these solo runs where maybe it was new for a lot of other people, where it's like you're a little bit isolated, you're used to being out with people. So it almost like refocused me. And my plan was really supplemented a lot by like that summer, like a lot of hiking, like just time on task, like time on my feet, steep hikes, longer hikes. Because I felt like up to that point, that had gotten me most prepared for mountain ultras, was just like getting into the terrain that's going to be like a race day experience. Like I don't necessarily need to go run like 30 miles on pavement to get ready. It's like I know how to run. I have that base already. I need to get used to like the different muscle groups that I'm going to have to use throughout a 24-hour period. So I didn't have like a strict like run schedule in particular. It's really funny because I'm in finance. I really like to plan and I'm very organized. But when it comes to like training plans, it's very loose. It's very
like an escape for you.
Yeah, I think it is. It's very like feel based, how my body's feeling. Like
vibes. Can't do vibes in finance.
No, cannot at all. So,
although you guys are just
yeah,
the vibes are good.
That is true. And you know, I would basically have like, yeah, Sunday might be like I'm gonna do a long run, but I don't have a set distance or anything like that. And maybe some days I'd run with a little bit more tempo. So it was like a loose plan, but I was still getting mileage. I was most concerned with time on my feet, because I was like, how am I going to do like going through the night? I think that's the biggest like mental roadblock for anybody to do like a long race beyond like 50 miles, or like, because when you start getting into 100K, you like start creeping into the night. And then if you go 100, you're definitely going to go into the night, which is like, it's a scary thought at first.
Unless you're really fast.
Yeah, unless you're extremely fast. So I think that's always a mental hurdle. But I would just say, like, again, if to prepare for that, you don't necessarily have to be, if you've been running long enough, I don't think you have to be worried about a specific set training block, but more just focused on time on your feet and replicating the terrain, and like not necessarily having to like move fast, but just getting used to that. So that's kind of how I'd attacked it.
So race day comes around, you're standing on the start line. What's going through your head?
Well, before the start line was ridiculous. So this is, again, down in the Sangre de Cristo, southern Colorado. I was there with my friend and my brother-in-law. My brother-in-law flew in from the East Coast. He was nice enough to come in, and we drove down. This was like, the start was like outside Silver Cliff. So if anyone's been down that way on the east side of the range, like there's not a lot of places to stay. And most of the runners were like car camping or camping like right at the start line. We decided to do that. It wasn't great. Like it's just not very flat, but it was super windy that night. Like a windstorm came through in the middle of the night, and me and my friend and brother-in-law were in this tent, and the wind is so bad that the sidewall of the tent is like blowing down on our faces. Like if we didn't put our hands up, we would like suffocate. And this is like, I'm checking my watch and it's like
3 a.m.
It's like 12:30. And I'm just like, we're laughing in the tent. I'm like, what the hell did I just sign up for? And we're poking our heads out of the tent and you just see headlamps everywhere. People are trying to like grab stuff that's flying away and like no one's sleeping. And because it's a COVID year, they were doing waved starts. So they're starting like only 5 or 10 people at every 5 minutes. And so normally the race starts at 4 a.m. But they had waves starting all the way at like 2:50 a.m. or something. And my luck of the draw was like 3:20 a.m.
Oh my God.
And I'm just looking at my watch. I'm like, it's 12:30. I haven't slept at all. And I have to like get up here in a couple of hours. So I'm basically going into my first 100-mile experience
With no
with
sleep.
sleep deprivation right away
On night zero.
on night zero. And so at the start line, it's cold, it's dark, and I'm just thinking, I have no idea how this is going to go. This could go really bad because the race starts out like basically a 2.5 mile, 2,000 foot climb to a pass. And then you come back to the start and like go out on the trail. So it's a six, and you have to finish that way as well. You come back to the finish and then you have to do the 2 mile, 2,000 foot climb up to the pass and then come back down. So it's kind of torturous in that way. So I think, I had a lot of thoughts running through my head that this was going to be a bad idea. And I think I was thankful that it was dark in that climb up at the start. But yeah, once the sun comes up and everything, like you kind of get your pace. Everything was fine until that night falls, and by the time the sun was coming up the next day, I was hallucinating. It's the only race I've ever had hallucinations, and I definitely know why. It was because of the lack of sleep, because I've slept way better in 200 before a 200-mile race than that, and I did not hallucinate. So even my pacer, my brother-in-law, he was hallucinating, and he picked me up at like mile 70 and ran the rest of the way with me through the night. But yeah, I was seeing, little rocks, thinking they're people camping out with their like truck up on the side of the trail. And I'm like, and my brother-in-law's like, hey, do you see that like boat over there? And I'm like, what are you talking about? It's just a tree when we get close enough to it. So your mind will play crazy tricks with you if you don't have sleep. So I would say do whatever you can to get as much sleep as possible because you're definitely going to be short of it when you get into the event.
I paced a friend at Ure 100 a couple years ago, and I picked her up at 6 a.m. and it was like miles 60 something, and we did like 13 miles together, and she was hallucinating by like 8 a.m., 9 a.m., and it was like, Indiana Jones was on the trail following us.
Yep.
And Kelly, like, we got to have another adventure like this. Come on. What a time that was. Okay, so at that point, you still have a choice. You're still making a choice to do a hard thing. What gave you the ability to be like, hands up in the air, I'm just going to do it. Like I submit to the wind. I submit to the 3:20 draw.
Yeah.
How did you press start on your watch, that middle of the night?
Yeah. And I think that kind of starts with like before you even get to the starting line and developing like what is your why? Because I think if that's not strong enough, you're likely going to quit. And for me, there's kind of like a negotiation with myself of like, hey, if I'm going to go do this thing, then I'm taking quitting off the table. Like I will crawl to the finish line unless I have like a limb is falling off or something and I cannot physically like move. I'm going to finish this thing. I don't care if I'm dead last.
Why?
I just think like that's part of why you ultimately sign up for an ultra. Like you're trying to find that limit and see if you can push past it a little bit. Like that's the whole purpose. Like you sign up for a race knowing it's going to suck at some point, most likely. And you do it enough times, like, there's going to be pain, there's going to be discomfort, but I think you get enough experience doing those things. And now you're like, your relationship with pain changes. It's almost like you're looking forward to when that comes because now you're like, now it's really time to figure out like, am I going to push
What are you
through?
made of?
Yeah. Or am I just going to give in and be like, I don't need to do this. Like for me, I think there's accountability when you put it out there to your parents, your friends, your coworkers, that you're like, hey, I'm going to go run this 100-mile race. That's sometimes the scariest thing is like telling other people. Like when you speak it and put it out in the public, now you can't really just go back on your word, at least for me, but I think this is probably for a lot of people. Like, it's easy to disappoint ourselves. Like, we can let ourselves off the hook, but to disappoint somebody else is mortifying. Like, to me, I hate that. Like, if I tell somebody I'm going to do something, just consider it done. Like, it will get done. So I think that kind of is like it's just how I'm wired. Like, going into those things, I've thought about it enough that if I'm signing up, there's nothing that's going to stop me from finishing. Like, strip away the times and like having a goal, and like, it's great. Like, sure, I have a goal every time I go into a race, but to be quite honest, once like the gun goes off or the watch starts, that kind of just fades away immediately. And I'm just trying to think, okay, let's go have ourselves a day in the mountains or in this beautiful setting and just see what my body and my mind and my spirit gives me today. And let's just like roll with what's going to come.
How does that show up in other parts of life, or how does that approach improve other parts of life for you?
Yeah. I think about longevity and how consistency plays into that. Like, even with my team at work in our like one-on-one documents, like our weekly meetings, like I've put in some reminders there, like daily process goals, but there's like a phrase like consistency builds capacity, and that's like at the top. It's just like a little reminder about like, hey, let's just like remain consistent. As we get more consistent, you're going to be able to build this ability to do more and more and more.
Yeah, it's like the ability to do the thing and put yourself in a space like that enables you to do that in other places. And like, consistency compounds. You do 1% better every day, it's 37 times better over the, like, that kind of stuff. It's to me, it's the sandbox of, if you fail in running, it doesn't really matter. And if you succeed in running, it really fucking matters.
Yeah. And what I think I've learned, but I've been able to apply, take from ultra running, because to me, I tell people when they say like, why do you do it? And why do I keep doing it? It has taught me a lot of valuable life lessons that have shifted how I've behaved outside of running.
Yep.
So like, one being, just the idea of control. Like, I would say the younger me was very much like, I like to plan, and I would draw out a plan. And then if something were to go off course, it would kind of just like, it would disrupt me. It'd unravel me. I would be like, it would kind of short circuit some parts of my brain. And what ultra has taught me is two things. One is surrendering control, and just knowing that, you're going to kind of have to deal with whatever happens that day. Because you don't know how your body's going to respond on race day. Like,
right.
You could be feeling great the day before, and then you wake up on race day and you're like,
you got no sleep, and
yeah, and you're just like, I'm tired, or it's like something's acting up or aggravated, or like you don't know what's going to happen with your stomach when you start like putting in nutrition, and it's like,
not if it's a precision. It goes down great.
Precision has done well for me. So that I think the idea of control, because I think most of us as people, it's natural. We want to like control as much as possible in our lives, because that gives us comfort. Like, okay, I am in control of my life. Nothing's going to surprise me. But when we feel like we're out of control and things are happening to us, we can spiral. So it's taught me be okay with giving up control. And then it's also taught me patience, in that, there's a saying that I come back to with myself. It's like, don't be perfect, be patient. And just understanding like, hey, over a long enough course of time, like, you might be in a really bad spot, like in a race where you didn't think. It's like, hey, it's only mile 22 of a 100-mile race, and all of a sudden you're feeling awful for whatever reason, mentally, or something nutritionally is not working for you. And your immediate thought is like, oh my gosh, I have 78 more miles to go. Like, you immediately, your brain goes and says, quit, abort. We're not going to be able to sustain like feeling like this for 78 more miles. But then if you just calm yourself down, stay the course, hey, slow down a little bit, maybe like sip on some hydration, whatever it is, and just like get to the next place where you can kind of get a little support and see what happens. And there's been times when, hey, that feeling, that low point lasts for maybe it's just another mile, or just like 20 minutes. And then you, all of a sudden you're like, I feel like $1,000,000. I feel like I could go all day. And that is just what I think 100-mile races are viewed sometimes as like, it's a lifetime in a day. And that is true because you are going to feel the ebbs and flows and the emotional swings that occur. Like you're going to feel the lowest of lows. You're going to feel down on yourselves. You're going to feel negative. But you're also going to feel like this overwhelming joy and awe and gratitude when you're on the high points. And I think that is super valuable to apply to your life. Just like stay steady in the boat. Like just get through this moment. It's not going to stay like this forever. Even if you're at a low point, just like keep working through it. And eventually you're going to come out the other end and you'll be better for it that way. So
that all makes sense. You've done hundreds, then you decide, okay, I'm going to try 200s.
Yeah.
I run with a buddy, Kevin Goldberg, who's done a bunch of 200s, and he's got a podcast, Distance to Empty, which talks all about running 200s and beyond, which is crazy. Speaking of finance, I need Fidelity to sponsor a 401k, which is 250 miles or 240 miles. What is it about the 200? Like, why?
Why? Yeah, that is a good question.
And yes, people listening, 200 miles, one go.
Yeah, one go. No stage race where you're like setting up camp after a day. I think that was like, yeah, I'd done a few hundreds and
I need to scratch the itch.
I was the itch was still there. I was like, well, I did 100. Like, could I do 200? And it started again. It was like one of those things. I kind of sat on it for months and months. I was like, all right, let's not be crazy here. Let's make sure we have a good reason.
Yeah, you've lost the chance to say that.
Yeah.
Once you go past 50K.
Yeah, that's how I get introduced now at like in work events or for like at a conference, and I have coworkers who are like, oh, meet Dom, like he's crazy, he runs 200-milers, and I'm just like, okay. And then I got a whole, there's like everyone has all the questions.
If it hits, you have an instant connection.
It is, yeah, it's true.
It's like, oh, I'm that crazy too.
Yeah. So
what are you doing after this?
So it ultimately it was a natural progression where I just didn't feel like I had hit the limit yet. And so I was like, again, same kind of thought process.
What does that mean? What does not hitting the limit mean?
I just felt like, I think in the hundreds when I finished, and I've had some that were like really brutal at the end, but I still felt like there was more in the tank. I was like, like, all right, like, yeah, it was painful, but like I could still go, that there was it just felt like I hadn't left everything entirely there where I was completely spent.
So why not try and go faster versus longer?
Yeah. And I'm still experimenting with that. Like the second like 100-mile experience I had was the Keys 100, and that's in Florida. It's in May. It's very hot.
Very hot.
But it's
very
flat. But it's flat. And so that was different than my first one, which was 20,000 vertical. And I basically thought like, oh, I could run this one fast. Let's see how fast I can go. Well, the humidity really, really crushed me, and it crushed my feet too, because there's like the moisture and everything.
Feet were wet.
Yeah, so there was just like blisters all over. It was so bad that, the final 30 miles was almost like walking on broken glass every step, because I had like the blisters were like bottom of my foot, side of my foot, top of my foot.
So it gets you into some better socks.
Yeah, I mean, and the socks were just like, every time they're just like soaked. So yeah, I came out of that one kind of, that scarred me the most, because I was like, my parents were crewing for that one, and they were so concerned. They're like, I think we need to take you to like the like just the like urgent care just to check to make sure there's like nothing wrong.
Feet aren't falling off.
Which they, we did go, and they were like, what did you just do? And I was like, yeah, I just ran 100 miles in the Keys. And so that was kind of like, I was like, okay, no more running in Florida or extremely humid environments for ultras. So I'm kicking around the idea of some other stuff that's maybe a little bit more arid climates where I could test the speed thing out, because I do want to try and see like what's that limit, like how fast could I go. But like going back to the 200s, that was more of like, I knew it was going to be a much different ball game. It's completely different than a 100-miler. Like, very much so like how a marathon is very different than ultra trail running. It's kind of like a crash course in survival and logistics, really. That's a 200-mile race.
What was finishing one of those like?
Wow. The 200 was especially meaningful. I had a crew of 4, so it was my dad, brother-in-law's dad, and one of my dad's buddies. And my brother-in-law, he paced me for a good chunk of the race, but all the other guys, they're not runners. You know, they've never signed up for a race in their life. And they were also kind of learning on the fly on like how to crew as we went through the thing. But I just remember I had the 200 I ran, it was Tahoe 2024, and I had entered for the lottery in the summer of 22 for the 23 race, and I got in. And so, okay, I get going on the training, and then the Sierras have like the craziest winter they've ever had in decades. And so January, February rolls around, like the race director's like, oh, you know, course is way under snow right now. We're still planning on hosting the same weekend. We don't know what we're going to do.
It's June, right?
Yeah, it's June. And eventually it gets to be like March or April, and the email comes, yeah, we decided like we're going to move the race a month out because to keep it at the current course would, like, most of it's under snow still, and we'd have to significantly alter it and like be at lower elevation. So you're not going to get the same experience, which means you're not going to get your ass kicked as much. And so they offered people to, hey, if you can make that weekend, great. If not, we'll let you roll over. No charge to you for 2024. And the July weekend they had, I already had plans for like a vacation, so that I couldn't change. So I opted to go to 24. So that 200-mile like monkey was on my back for like
18 months.
18 months. So there were many nights.
It's a big monkey.
Yeah, there were many nights where I was like head to the pillow, and some nights I'm like excited about it. I'm like, this is going to be fun. And then other nights I'm like, what the heck is this going to be? This is going to be so brutal. Like, I watched so many, YouTube videos of different people's experiences doing 200 milers, trying to figure out how I'm going to feel. I replayed different moments of that race in my head before the race over and over and over. Like, how am I going to feel when I get to like 110 miles, when it's like the furthest I've ever gone? How am I going to feel on night 3? How am I going to feel when I cross the finish line? All of these things I visualized over and over and over again, so that oddly enough, when I got to race day, I was the calmest I've ever been going into a race. Normally I have like this, I'm jittery, I'm like anxious. I just want to start. I don't like being in there with like a corral with a bunch of people. I just want to get out on the trail, get my space, and just kind of settle in. But I was just like in very good spirits starting it. Maybe I was compartmentalizing what I was about to take on, but to be able to get to that finish, I remember thinking, I was like, I don't know how I'm going to respond. Like, am I going to be kind of like stoic about it and just like really happy? Am I going to just break down and cry? And I do remember like the last 10 miles of that race were, it was kind of wacky, like doing great and going to finish. And I knew I was going to finish. And I had like moments even before the finish with my brother-in-law where I kind of like stopped and kind of broke down on the trail. Like, I just was in such a low point. I'm like at mile 190. I don't know why.
Jesus.
And I'm just like, I had done some miscalculations on how much distance was left, which I advised don't do math on like hour 70.
It's hard enough to do math in a marathon.
Yeah, where I had misread the trail marking, thinking the distance was to the crossing point in the road. So the final section, you have to cross over. There's a mountain pass and the road cuts through. And the trail, you have to cross the road to get to the final section, which is like 4 miles to the start finish. And I was reading the trail marker where it said like 10 miles to go. And I thought it was 10 miles to the road crossing. And then I still had another 4. And I was like, we've been going for like a few hours. Like, how are we going this slow? Like, I was getting upset with myself. I was like, hey, have had a great race. And now all of a sudden I'm seemingly going slow, but my perceived effort is so high. So I kind of just like lost it for a moment and was just kind of disappointed in myself, even though in the grand scheme of things, I was doing great. And then I realized at the next trail marker, like, oh, this was the distance to the finish. And all of a sudden I did the math and I was like, oh, I cut 4 miles out of my head. And I was like, oh my gosh, we're only 6 miles to the finish now. And then from there on, I like booked it. Like, I don't know. I was probably putting in paces that were better than I was doing on day one for a few miles. And so coming into that finish line, my dad was like the first person that I came in contact with and just hugged him. And I just immediately just kind of lost it and had a moment. And his first thought is like, are you okay? And I was like,
Not really.
I'm like, not really, but yes, because having to kind of like put that armor up in your mind of like getting ready to tackle a 200-mile race and then just getting to the end where you can finally just kind of like, you can let go. It's like, it's over now. And just having that moment to think, wow, what the heck just happened? Like, I can't believe that just happened. Like when you look at a map and think of like, how far do we have to go? And you get
I don't
through
even
it.
like driving that far.
Yeah, that's exactly what one of my coworkers said. He's like, I've driven 200 miles before at once. And I was like, just making a joke all the time. But it does help too, I think, like having any race distance, really, having people there. Like if you can have a good crew. And for me, I found like having family there is super helpful. And why the 200 finish was so impactful for me, like my dad being there, maybe because I think, again, when you're having like those low moments in the race and you're in between aid stations, you're just trying to figure out how to survive and like, how do I get to the next aid station? And the thing that kept me going, like more so than the hydration or the nutrition that I'm putting in my body, was the thought of like, hey, my dad's gonna be there. And it just like took me back to like childhood, where no matter like how bad of a day you had, like if you're at school and some kid makes fun of you or if something bad happens, like you go home and it's like mom or dad's going to be there and like everything's going to be okay. Like they're going to take care of you. So that's kind of like the feeling that I kept in my mind throughout that race, was like, okay, no matter how bad I'm feeling, dad's going to be there and he's going to do whatever it takes to like get me back on my feet. So, I don't know if I've told him that directly, but I did tell him how much it meant to have him there. And, that playing that through to my head, like that's the biggest fuel you can have, is like knowing you have a crew of people, whether it's family or friends or significant others, to just be there and sacrifice their time to just keep you alive through an adventure.
Hopefully he listens to this podcast and he gets to this point and he realizes how impactful that was. My dad's been at a bunch of finish lines with me as well, and it's such an incredible experience to share. If you could go back and talk to the version of you from 10 years ago, what would you say to that Dom?
I'd say if there's something that you want to go after or that you're curious about, don't wait. Just start. Don't wait for perfect information. I guarantee you in life, you're probably never going to have perfect information to decide on something. So yeah, just get started and kind of, build the plane as you're flying. Like that's the best way you're going to learn anyway. I think we get, overwhelmed with analysis paralysis of like, especially just getting into running. It's like, what kind of shoes do I need to wear? Do I want this brand? Like, do I need like sunglasses? What kind of like hydration should I have? It's like, just put some shoes on and start running, and you're going to find out if those shoes work for you or not, because you might have blisters after a few races, and then you're saying, okay, those go in the trash. But yeah, just get started and figure it out as you go.
Love it. Dom, this has been a blast. Yeah. Appreciate you sharing your story, and hope we can share some miles at some point in the future.
Yeah, sounds great. Thank you.
Cool.